what's your take on cryonics versus mind uploading? It's interesting how people seem divided on these topics.
So I think in the long run, I definitely want to be uploaded, but first I want to see it work. Yeah. I'm not going to be the guinea pig. I want to be the man in lab coat with a clipboard standing next to it and say, yes, it looks like the test subject survived. Then I'm very happy to be uploaded. However, that might take a while. So in order to get to that future, you want to preserve your brain. And it used to be cryonics was the only game in town, except of course not dying, which is of course always even better. Now we have issues about plastination or aldehyde preservation, which are started to kind of compete against cryonics, which I think is great. Because in many ways, although I love cryonics as a concept, I'm very happy to openly wear my necklace with my cryonics tag. Yeah, it needs competition. We need to up the game here. We need to prove what works, try to improve the technology, get better science. And I think cryonics have been rather slow in doing that. So now the new stabilizing people, they're giving a bit of competition. They of course also have to prove that stuff. So I think that competition is going to be very good.
Now we speak a lot to Ken Hayworth, and we did a lot of the videos for the brain preservation stuff, and I think it's really interesting what they're doing. It's just funny to me how, in my mind, that they're looking at the same problem. I mean, different methods and so on, and yet it seems that people still have, I guess, a cultural or philosophical problem with both of these ideas. As if both of them were solutions, it's more about, oh well, this whole idea of, well, am I a copy, and is this really me? But they don't really see that with cryonics. Oh, that's mine. So do you know what I mean? But there does seem like a real divide in the sort of transhuman community around these issues, which, I don't know, it seems an odd thing to have a divide about. But maybe this is exactly what you were saying. We then get into the thing, and philosophers, but then I've forgotten how you call it. We have
different gangs of philosophers, but this happens to humans naturally. If we're a large enough group, we are going to organize ourselves into subgroups. And then we are going to tell ourselves in our group that we're so much better than those guys. Why are we doing that? Well, we want to safeguard our egos, even if it's just random assignment to group. The problem here is, of course, when things matter, when there is actually something at stake, and especially something at stake that is close to your existential concepts and your philosophy of life, you can become rather harsh about it, even though you should be intellectually humble and actually realize, yeah, actually, we're all very uncertain about these things. We should be working together. But unfortunately, we have this monkey in a way of thinking that, oh, us versus them. So when it comes to thinking about cryonics and brain emulation, I find it that, yeah, brain emulation requires a rather long laundry list of philosophical and scientific things to be true. I think they are true, but I know I don't have proof of that. I think it would be very cool to try to gather evidence to show that. Cryonics needs another list of things to be true. And again, we need to do research about that. But it's quite possible that both of them are pipe dreams because there is something fundamentally wrong. And that there is no shortage of people outside the community who are all too eager to say that. Usually using very smug and very bad arguments, which means uploaders and cryonics people at least can say, yeah, we don't buy that. But sometimes, yeah, there are good reasons to be cautious about what can work and not work. And we should be investigating that.
If you were designing your I hate to call it heaven, but like your afterlife, your upload environment, whether that's a way thing, what would you like your brain to be uploaded to? Have you seen there's a show called Upload? It's very good, actually. That's worth.
Oh yeah, I need to watch it. I heard Robin being skeptical about the economics, but go figure. Nobody ever does the correct economics on any science fiction show. Yeah, so I just want a little Jupiter brain. Basically,
a little what?
A Jupiter brain.
Okay.
So my first ever published scientific paper was actually about daily life among the Jupiter brains. Basically, how big can you make a computer? And I'm updating it now for my book project, but basically, having just 1.4 liters of neurons, or the digital counterpart if I'm uploaded, why not twice? Why not 1,000 times more? Couldn't one actually think better thoughts, or more thoughts, or even run more Anderses? The day is too short. I have so many things to do and so many interesting new directions. So if I existed virtually, I would soon have 1 or 2 copies working on projects. And we would, of course, soon realize, oh, I need a few extra copies. And before you know it, you would have an entire society of us. Hopefully that society would be stable. There's no guarantee that I would get along with myself. The heaven can lead to all sorts of bizarre disasters. But there is also this interesting possibility of modifying minds. And if you're digital, you can press the undo button if that was a stupid thing. You can even have an original copy of yourself with the undo button because you can't trust the modified version. Some very deep ethical issues here about what I can pre-commit to. After all, I can't pre-commit to quite a lot of medical procedures that would be interesting from a scientific standpoint, but would probably be unethical to do with people. However,
well, I don't know. I mean, one of the things that we sort of played out in the film is, you know, obviously anybody who's frozen now, or if they had plasticized or preserved their brain, you know, wouldn't have any rights. But there's these, you know, these ideas of living wills, or ideas of what one could do or not do. I mean, I imagine that as the law becomes more thoughtful, I guess, about some of these issues, that these are things that we will have to sort of, like, I don't want, you know, can we dictate? I don't want to be part of like some weird museum exhibit in the future where I'm, you know, whatever. I mean, like, so I imagine that the work of Anders pre this is actually going to be quite, you'll need some extra, some extra liters, because I mean, because we're not just thinking about, you know, how in most contracts, you know, it says something like, in all things imagined or whatever, you know, I've forgotten the legalese term of, you know, this covers us for this, but if there's other things, but I mean, the things that again, in this process, that one would have to think about in terms of informed consent are massive, because, right? I mean, what are some of the, if you were drafting this, and this is pretty much, because I know, I could talk to you all day, so this has been a lot of fun, but I'll leave
it
this.
would be hilarious to actually try drafting it, because I'm married to a prosecutor. We have actually had some rather fun legal conversations about these topics.
Well, I should have you both on to debate this and how you'd put this on. That seems like a fun.
He's not signed up for cryonics yet, but when we got married, my vows to him actually end till death do us part temporarily. After the ceremony, he pointed out, as a lawyer, I need to tell you that actually, if one of us dies, that actually ends the marriage. But I'm willing to give you a second chance, which I think is totally reasonable if there is just one of me. There's going to be a really weird problem if there are multiple Anderses. How many can be married to the same person and so on? But I think this is the kind of legal conundrum that people can solve. After all, we solved legal conundrums for thousands of years. This is what lawyers love doing, especially when they get paid for doing it. There is also the ethical conundrum, and I think that one is tougher. Can I pre-commit to do brain surgery to myself that might actually leave me a horrible wreck, and then just undo it, which means ending the life of that horrible wreck, even though it gets replaced, of course, by a fresh copy of me who have no memories except some very disquieting pictures of the previous experiment. Let's not do that ever again. I think that's all right, but I know some ethicists who say, no way, Anders, that we're not going to allow you to do that. So there is a good ethics debate to be had here.
Massive. I mean, but what about the harm? I mean, if it's a question of harm, are you killing? Are you harming that entity, that Anders? I mean, you know, if that's the number one.
Now, the tricky part here is, of course, but what if I go to the dentist? I might be suffering some pain and a removal of a small amount of tissue, but it's for my own good in the long run. And this would have been true even as a kid, even though I didn't fully understand it back then. My parents would still have a role as my guardians to drag me to the dentist and say, yeah, this is for your own good, stop squealing. Now, could I do the same thing with myself? Well, one version of me and another version of me are in some sense on par, it's less clear that we can be guardians to each other. I might still sign up a contract saying that I'm totally happy for version number 2 to do brain surgery on me. However, an outside part might say, yeah, but that's stupid, Anders. You're a bit gullible and you don't understand ethics that well. We're not going to think this contract was a valid one.
But I mean, also, do you trust the society that's going to bring you to, I mean, it's more like when we imagine the society that's going to bring us back, it's like, well, you know, how is me going to be immersed in that society? Am I going to be an idiot, a child? You know, what's my role? Am I just like a, you know, something for people to look at, to learn from? Can I really be a member of that future society? I mean, there are so many. And then can I impose whatever this contract says on this future society? I mean, will that hold up? I mean, there are even those which are even bigger than the actual clauses in the contract itself.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of writing a paper about who to bring back. So in normal ethical discourse, the problem about future generations is that, okay, they're not born yet. So in some sense, they don't exist. They don't have any rights. Except that most people would say, actually, leaving a bomb in the forest that will blow up in 100 years and kill people in the forest at that time, that's wrong, even though none of these people exist yet. You're still doing something nasty here. And the fact that your actions are also going to affect who comes into existence doesn't mean that you can do anything you want. So this is, of course, part of Parfit's Reasons and Persons, where he's talking about the non-identity problem. But cryonics makes it an identity problem. There is a frozen guy in that liquid nitrogen. That's a particular person. And now you have a choice in the future society. Do you bring him out or not? And in some cases, it might be that, yeah, that's a great philanthropist who did very nice stuff, and that's the nasty sociopath guy who did start with. And maybe at this point, you have a really interesting ethical dilemma because you actually know information about them. If it had been just these nondescript tanks and it's kind of random, in many ways, the ethics is way easier.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, if you're in the future, you're designing, you know, the monsters of the 20th century, you want to have a psycho, you want to put, you know, so-and-so, you know, you've got whoever.
We can fill up a menagerie with our political opponents. There is actually a real problem here, but if moral progress is real, which some people actually think, and I think there is some truth to that, that might mean that if we bring somebody back from the past, they might actually be, morally speaking, a little bit problematic. Just imagine bringing somebody from the Victorian era back, and we have to tell them gently, by the way, that racism, that homophobia, and that sexism, it's not done anymore. The Queen would be most upset if she heard you say that. That's perhaps doable, but it might be that in the future we have enhanced ourselves even more. So no cruelty. We're all very, very sane and sensible people. And then we get in one of those guys from the 21st century back. This
is a science fiction film just in the making.
And I think most of the time we are telling stories which are about us right now. And I think one can, of course, have a very fun story about the problem that we are morally cruel and the future will have trouble with it. But there is also a really deep ethical problem about our obligations, even to the crude people in our past. If we could bring Neanderthals back, maybe we have a kind of moral responsibility, because I think we have a feeling that us Homo sapiens might have had a hand in wiping them out. Oops, maybe we actually have an obligation. But on the other hand, that's a real responsibility, uplifting another species. So there is a lot of good moral dilemmas here. Even if everybody's totally well-meaning and so on, you're still going to get so much cool anguish and drama from this.
No end. I would love to talk to you again because I've got so many more questions for you, but we'll leave it. Thank you so much. It's really good to see you. You look good with your long hair. Looks good. And I would love to do this. I would love to like serve as a, not that you need it, as an intermediary between your partner and you, and discuss like what this contract would look like. That seems like a fun thing.
That would be hilarious. Yeah.
Let's do that. That seems like a fun thing.
Yeah.
All right. You take care. All the best.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.